Hello, Old School Comics Reviews. Okay, this time let's look at Jim Starlin's mid-70s run on Warlock. Um, these are pretty interesting comics. They were pretty. I don't know how well they sold. They couldn't have sold very well because they ended up canceling the thing. But I mean, they were pretty critically acclaimed, and they're really fun, really different types of comics. And another important thing is a lot the stories and the events that happen in these stories here actually affected a lot of stories later on during the Marvel universe. Years later, even today, I would say that these might be really interesting if you like the cosmic stuff that Marvel's putting out now. Stuff like Annihilation, Conquest, and the uh, Nova and Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff like that. Or if you liked Infinity Gauntlet from the 90s, if you remember that series, or even the Silver Surfer ongoing from the late 80s and early 90s, these might be really interesting to pick up just because, a lot of the same characters, appear. Obviously Warlock, of course, Gamora's in it. Obviously, of course, Thanos plays a big role. So I would say go into it with like the right attitude. Because, as far as those other stories I mentioned, more recent things, the stuff I've read, I like them. They're great. They're fun. They're exciting. Lots of interesting characters. But, the more recent stuff is a lot. Well, it's very straightforward. It's very straightforward stories. Some of the stories here, back from 1975 or whatever, are the exact opposite of straightforwardness. Okay, Jim Starlin is bringing in, different ideas about psychology and psychiatry, or not psychiatry, but psycholatry and metaphor and metaphysics, and they get kind of psychedelic up in there, and he's bringing in the mystical stuff that Steve Ditko used to do with Doctor Strange. He's putting it in here, so it's really, some of it gets really crazy and out there. So, and of course the stories toward the end of his run are a little bit more, sane and a little bit more straightforward. But some of them, they're out there. They're very heady and trippy and crazy and things like that. They're as bizarre, if not more bizarre, than stuff that like Grant Morrison would do today. Okay, so basically Jim Starlin's run ran roughly from Strange Tales 178 to 181, and then Warlock 9 through 15, I think, and then the series kind of wrapped up, or story is kind of wrapped up in a couple of annuals that were put out. Marvel 2-in-1 annual number 2, I think, and Avengers annual number 7. And at the end of that series, I'm not giving anything away. Warlock appears to have died until he comes back later in Infinity Gauntlet some years later. Just a little real quick backdrop or background on the character. I'm not 100% certain, but I'm pretty sure the character was only used a couple of times back in the 60s by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, a couple of Fantastic Four and Thor stories, and the character was called Him, and I guess he was created by some evil scientist or whatever, blah, 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 and I don't know, whatever. They had this, whatever. At the end of the story, he went off somewhere, and that was it. I guess what happened later, maybe a half a dozen years later, Roy Thomas, who was an editor and writer at Marvel during the early 70s, saw Jesus Christ Superstar and thought, wouldn't it be a cool idea to do kind of a superhero version of this? So, he brings back the character Him, gives him the name Adam Warlock, has him have these followers that are following him around. He has to fight, evil or, this devil type creature. Well, he wasn't really a devil type creature, but he kind of metaphorically represented the devil, called Man Beast. Man Beast? The Man Beast, I think that's what he was called. And whatever, that series went on for about maybe, 8 issues or so. It was canceled, blah, blah, blah. In comes Jim Starlin, who's coming off of his run on Captain Marvel, the 70s character, Marvel. He did that series, left, comes back to Marvel or whatever, it picks up Warlock and thinks, oh well, why don't I take this character who's this um cosmic messiah type character? Wouldn't it be interesting to do this dark, twisted, you know, dark, twisted, moody type of cosmic adventure with him? And that's what we got here. Basically, the main arc that he started off with, once again, is really weird and bizarre and crazy, and it's just one of those things where you go, only in the 70s. Basically, Warlock finds out about this organization called the Universal Church of Truth, which is this evil church, this evil Inquisition type thing that goes around killing people that they can't convert and so on and so forth. And pretty quickly he discovers that the leader of the church is this character called Mangus, or not Mangus, but main guy. Why don't I just pick it up and find it, since I can't evidently pronounce it correctly. Magus, there, that's what I'm trying to say. And he almost immediately finds out that Magus is actually himself, an evil version of himself from the very near future. So the thing is, he has to destroy the church. Well, the mission becomes he has to destroy the church, fight the Mangas, and then somehow prevent the Mangas from coming into existence. And basically, like I said before, you get into these weird head trips. Warlock is going into other dimensions. Thanos shows up because, he's involved for reasons of his own, which, pay off a lot later, and Warlock picks up a sidekick, Pip the Troll, Gamora comes in, she's involved, and it's just a lot of weird, crazy stuff. Like I said, Jim is bringing in different ideas that he's picked up from, psychology and so on and so forth. I know I've seen interviews where he's mentioned that Thanos was originally the skinnier guy, but he was kind of inspired by Darkseid, and then Roy Thomas told him to bulk the character up. And it's pretty, it's not maybe evident on first read, but knowing that and going back and reading it again, you can see how, these characters, Warlock and Magus represent, the two sides of the human psyche, and Thanos represents the dark side, and these characters represent this, and these characters represent that, and so on and so forth. So it's real interesting, trippy in that sort of way. Some of the other fun things they put in here, or crazy things they put in there. There's a story called 10,000 Clowns, which a lot of people have since said was really Jim kind of mocking, the comics industry, or at least comic editors in general. And one funny thing is the head clown in the story. Some people said it's supposed to be Len Wein, who was an editor at Marvel Comics at the time. Other people say it's a goof on Stan Lee. And I almost go with that one just because the character talks in this big, flamboyant style, and plus the clown's name is Lynn Teens, right? So some people say it's Len Wein because the character's name is Lynn, but I've also heard if you screw around with the letters in Lynn Teen's name, it's very close to Stan Lee. I mean, I think you get like an extra letter in there or whatever, an extra something. But there you go. So you have that story, you've got, the Magi, or I don't know why I want to keep saying the Magi, but the Magus. There's all sorts of things about, truth and freedom and individuality. There's sorts of ideas of, oppressive, religions. Of course, there's the whole thing where, Warlock thinks he's going crazy and stuff like that. And that's another thing. Even in the midst of all this crazy, psychedelic, moody, dark stuff, you also have this kind of like, well, it's a comic book and anything goes type of vibe. At one point, Captain Marvel just shows up in the middle of the comic and says something to the effect. He looks at the reader, and says, "Hey, readers, for the few of you people who are confused about who is Thanos, well, here he is," and he basically gives you the history of Thanos up until that point, And at the end of the page, he kind of like flies off and says, well, thanks for listening, and now back to our story. And just that kind of sort of lighthearted, anything goes type of thing is another aspect that makes the comic really interesting to me. Like I said, after they wrap that particular story up, which actually has I'll say this, mild spoiler, has another crazy thing in it where Warlock has to go 2 years into the future to like kill himself, deal with that, But the stories get a little bit more straightforward. There's one story that focuses on his sidekick, Pip the troll, the cigar smoking troll, and he has a little wacky adventure where he's trying to save a girl and the wacky mishaps that ensue. There's a really fun, I think, straight ahead story though, where he has to fight a character called the Star Thief, who is this guy who's in a hospital and he's in a coma, but he's got these great cosmic psychic powers where he's able to manipulate all sorts of events, not only here on Earth, but the other side of the galaxy. And he's sending monsters and space sharks and things like that to fight Warlock, and Warlock's has to like slug it out with all sorts of rock monsters and fire monsters and what have you. And that's another fun story. Basically, like I said, the story kind of wrapped up in Marvel 2-in-1 and Avengers Annuals from a couple of years after that. Like I said, you find out what Thanos' plan was all along. There's references to like the Infinity Gems. Yeah, the Infinity Gems, even though here they're called the Soul Gems. And it's all just fun comics. They're all for all the trippiness and craziness, it's fun comics. They're a little bit dense, there's not like, it's that old school, Silver Age, Bronze Age storytelling where, the comics are coming out every month, you didn't have the trades and things like that, so you had to like hook everybody, you had to cram everything you could into each issue, and you had to recap everybody, get them caught up to speed. But even without the recaps and stuff, there's still a lot that you have to process, which is a lot of fun. I mean, you have to actually like sit down and read the comic in order to get it, So that's basically it. I would say these stories are actually pretty easy to get. I do know that Marvel is reprinting them in like hardcover, and but the physical thing that I got, I actually have reprints, and then I have reprints of the reprints. Back in the early mid '80s, they reprinted these stories for the direct market, and these were like the Baxter editions, where they reprinted them this heavy, really white paper, and they only went out to the direct sales. This is right when the direct market was really kind of taking over. And then, like, after Infinity Gauntlet was popular, they reprinted them again, with newer covers by Jim Starlin again, but the breakdown is exactly the same. So you should be able to find these comics pretty cheap. If you don't want to get the hardcover, find the reprints. You could probably literally get them for like cover price. Okay, and that's about it. I'm running out of tape, so tell me if you like this review. Tell me what you think. If there's other stuff that you think I missed that I should check out, definitely let me know. Hey, check out my blog. I'll leave the link down at the bottom where we can babble again about some other more groovy fab type comic type stuff. Okay, alright, thanks, and you have a good one.